For nearly 60 years, the preeminent Asian power in Central America was Taiwan. Yet in rapid succession starting in 2017, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and El Salvador surprised many by switching their diplomatic recognition to Beijing, joining Costa Rica, which has done so in 2009. Today, China's methodical push for a bigger foothold in Central America is no longer surprising to anyone. China is here to stay, and they want the business that is in Central America. Good evening. Welcome to another interesting program of the International Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight on the International Grapevine, we'll talk a little bit about Central America, the importance of Central America to the United States of America and to the entire region. So when we talk about Central America, obviously we're talking about Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and of course, part of Panama. What we want to talk about, the importance of Central America. We want to talk a little bit how China has penetrated Central America and how does the United States feel about it. And one of the most important things to know is that Taiwan was in Central America for a very, very long time. And all of a sudden now, China's taking over. What does that mean? What better person to discuss that more than my special guest, which I had the opportunity to have him on International Grapevine before. And we felt very, very happy with the program that we did with him. And most of our viewing audience thought that he did a wonderful job. So we want to take the opportunity to have him back on our program, talking about the former president of Costa Rica, Luis Guillermo Solis, who has been kind enough to be our guest. Welcome to our program, Mr. Solis.
Hello, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. I'm delighted to be with you once again and allow me the opportunity to greet all our viewers throughout the Americas and beyond. I'm very, very proud of being with you because this is a great honor. And well, here I am. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me a little bit.
Well, we felt very positive about the job that you did last time and also as president of Costa Rica. So we wanted to take this opportunity always to work with you when we can and when you allow us to. We wanted to find out, because we know for a fact that Taiwan was a power in Central America for more than 60 years. What happened to Taiwan? Why they're not the main person right now?
Well, you know that Taiwan has been losing its stand in the international community for a long time, since the 1970s, early 1970s, when the Republic of China, or Communist China, as it was known for a long time, began to make great strides within the international community and was recognized diplomatically by the United States. Since then, the diplomatic realm has been shrinking for Taiwan as it has been growing for the Republic of China. And obviously, because of its size and because of its power and because of its technological advantages, and became a major player in international affairs as it is today. And so in the same degree, Taiwan has been losing favor in many countries, and they have lost some ground in some of the areas where they were dominant for many decades. One of those areas is precisely Central America. Taiwan, for example, is still part of the Central American Integration Bank, and it has relations with half of the members of the Central American Integration System, SICA. So it remains a powerful player, but it has lost diplomatic relations with Costa Rica, El Salvador, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, which makes that to be a major setback for Taiwanese diplomacy.
Well, that brings me to another thing. Interesting, as you mentioned, it seems to me that Belize is still with them, Guatemala, and surprisingly, Nicaragua. How strong was their penetration into Central America when they went in years ago? And why have they fallen apart so fast in the last couple of years?
Well, I think it mainly, as I've said, it's because to economic, trade, and security reasons. I mean, the Republic of China is a huge country. It represents good part of the Asian population. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And it has become one of the world powers, a power in ascension, as it is generally called. And I think that the countries of Central America, some of them, have seen the situation, have studied the situation, and think that this is more convenient for them, as well as aligning themselves with the international community, which has, in a huge majority or by a huge majority, supported China's claims, including its claims over Taiwan. But I think that neither China nor Taiwan, which is a big trade partner of the Republic of China, by the way, we know that it's the first or second most important trading nation with Beijing, is going to be taken over by China. There are a number of agreements, including a very important one with the United States, that this is only going to happen peacefully. So I don't think that this is a major source of alarm, but it is true. It is true that diplomatically speaking, Taiwan has been in a very difficult situation for a number of years now.
Interesting. One of the things that brought to my attention, which I'm a little bit surprised, everyone know that Costa Rica is a very educated country and a peaceful country, and is one of the biggest allies that the United States of America has. And a matter of fact, Costa Rica was one of the first countries that started in Central America doing business with China. What was the reaction of the USA about that?
Oh, it was fine. I think at the time the United States did not seem perturbed, disturbed, concerned about Costa Rica taking that stance. It was during the administration of President Oscar Arias that the decision was made in 2009. And I think it represented one of President Arias' most recurrent issues that Costa Rica had to play in the world. And in order to do that, it required to open relations with China. And the United States was not concerned. Costa Rica remains a solid, if not the most solid ally of the United States in the region. We have a very positive relations with the United States. And I think it was made clear from the onset that opening relations with China should not be considered a fact in detriment of our relationship with the United States.
It's fair to say the United States knew about it back then, and they were not really truly concerned. Because my feeling was, I wonder if this flew under the radar and they didn't see it at the beginning.
Oh, no, not at all. I think there's enough intelligence that the Taiwanese had, and they shared it at the time, I'm sure, with American intelligence officials about the countries that are moving away from the realm of influence. Yes, the Taiwanese embassy in San Jose seemed to have been a bit surprised by the decision of Costa Rica, although again, I think that was more of a reaction than reality, because I do think that they were informed, and they decided to move on. So I think that the United States, we're going back to 2009, didn't think that China was going to make a move on Latin America as strongly and as decisively as it has done it. And by 2015, when the new relationships started to appear in the Central American map with the opening of relations with Panama, followed by El Salvador and the Dominican Republic, then Washington, which at the time was under a different administration, decided that it was time to move on and establish, some limitations, or at least express some grievances about the Chinese new positioning in the region.
If my memory serves me right, it seemed in 2017, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, and of course, Panama switch over to China. And what impact did that have for those countries?
Well, in the short term, it meant a number of cooperation agreements that they were able to broker with the Chinese. This is the usual way. They establish a number of benefits in terms of cooperation agreements. The Taiwanese did the same thing. I mean, they were basically trading with the support, the diplomatic support that they could get. In the case of Panama, nevertheless, Panama had a very specific trading chip that they used very intelligently, which was the canal, and therefore they became another linchpin in what the Chinese called the Road and Bridge and Road Initiative, or the New Silk Road, which is a strategic, how shall I call it, a strategic route to for China throughout the world, joining areas that are of extreme importance for their national security. Well, Panama became part of that, and as a result of this circumstance, Panama has announced the eventual development of up to 21 huge infrastructure projects that will be built with Chinese support.
Ironic, it's important that you mentioned this. It's important to know to our public that when China went into Panama, Washington was extremely, extremely concerned. Matter of fact, in the previous administration of the Trump administration, they were extremely concerned because of anyone who knows what's going on. The Panama Canal was built by the Americans, and for a long time, they owned the Panama Canal, and they turned it over to Panama back in, if my memory serves me right, 1999. So Washington was very concerned. What was Washington's main concern? That China would take over everything?
Well, I think, and I continue to argue, that the United States has the upper hand in the Caribbean basin. I mean, China is no competition for the United States here. The United States has, not only for cultural reasons, but also because of strategic and economic reasons, tremendous influence over Central America and the Caribbean. And I don't think that China poses a big threat. What happens is that there is a growing sensation in the United States, and this is a bipartisan issue. It's not a question of Democrats or Republicans. Both are now beginning to think that in the long term, which is the game that China plays, always playing the long game. They know how to wait. They can wait thousands of years if necessary. Their approach to Latin America can become detrimental to American interests. So, and this is particularly true in certain areas. They're less concerned about brick and mortar. They are less concerned about roads and bridges and ports.
Mm-hmm.
And there are already a number of important Chinese technological venues operating in Central America, both in countries that have relationship with them, like Costa Rica, as well as in countries that do not have relations with them, such as Guatemala or Belize or Honduras. And I'm talking about Huawei, which for the time being is working only on the area of intelligent telephones. But very soon, they are going to be bidding on 5G and other advanced technologies.
Wow.
Where the United States are behind. And this is the kind of thing that the Americans dread, that by taking over those sensitive areas of the economy, the Chinese may begin eroding the solid base of political and technological support that the United States enjoys in this region.
To a certain extent, it's obvious to say that China is some type of a threat to the United States, based on what you're saying with the technologies and stuff like that. What is it that Central America, most of those companies saw in China, why they wanted to do so much business? Is it technology? Is it that they were more feasible, more understanding to do? Did China promise these countries in Central America to build up the infrastructure of most of the country? What was the promise when China started penetrating slowly? Because it's important to know that China has also penetrated a good part of South America, but all of a sudden a tremendous interest in Central America since 2009.
Well, again, I think that it is obvious that the reason why they became interested in Panama is because of the strategic location of Panama, and I think that it is very clear that the Panama Canal is the. I'm going to dare say something very. It may be a bit too much, but it is the only true strategic asset in Central America. I mean, all other assets we have are deserts, tourism, beautiful beaches, great volcanoes, wonderful people, We are good in bringing together, like in Costa Rica, for example, sophisticated technological companies to build medical devices and other things. We have great forests. Some countries have gold and silver resources, but the true strategic asset for the future is the Panama Canal. So I think that is what the Chinese look at with more interest in Central America. South America is different because there you have the minerals, you have agriculture, you have water, you have a whole lot of, we have meat. Currently, China is buying most of, if not all, Argentinian beef for their own markets. But in Central America, I think it was Panama and the Central American countries have been lured to China because of the size of its market, because of the promises of investments that China has made, because we have a lot of needs. Certain countries in the region are not being supported by the United States anymore. Panama is one of them. Costa Rica is another one because we are considered to be middle-income countries. And some of the other countries that do receive American support are having problems because of internal issues, like El Salvador because of the authoritarian practices of President Bukele, Honduras because of the presumed links between the government of Honduras and narcos, Guatemala because of the same thing, and issues pertaining the administration of justice. So the United States has actually voiced its concern about those issues, and in a couple of cases, including the case of Nicaragua, it has threatened the countries, and for good reason, I think. I mean, I support that, to suspend relations and cooperation with them. So some of these countries are looking for an alternative, and the Chinese appear as being a very likely one.
I think the Chinese came in at the right moment to cover some of the things that you just mentioned. As we continue talking about Central America here in International Grapevine, we'll be right back with our special guest, Luis Guillermo Solis, who has been kind enough to come on our program to discuss these sensitive issues and the impact that all of this has had in Central America, and more important, where do we go from here? We'll be right back on International Grapevine. And we're back here in International Grapevine talking about the foothold that China seemed to have recently in Central America, the interest that they have in Central America. What does all of this mean in reality for Central America? What does China bring to the table? Okay. And in reality, as you go back and think about it, United States have always been in those small Central American countries. I think some of the frustration can be a little bit with the region because of all the immigration problems that El Salvador bring to this country, and also Honduras, and to a certain extent, maybe even Nicaragua. But I think it's more than that. And again, we are extremely grateful to have our special guest, Luis Guillermo Solis, which was the former president of Costa Rica, dating back to 2014 to 2018. And we feel that he's competent and knowledgeable enough to break down some of these things that we're talking about. That is not only important to the region, but also to America in one way or the other, especially when we talk about the Panama Canal, which is one of the wonders of the world. And not only that, the Canal of Panama is a moneymaker. Make no mistake about that. Not only that, it's in a key position, and it means a lot to the Americans, even though they gave it back to Panama. But there is a tremendous amount of interest. And I'm quite sure that the fact that how China penetrated in Panama, their main interest obviously is not only the country of Panama, but the canal. The canal is a golden thing. Well, Mr. Solis, we talked about so many important things about the penetration. Let's deviate for about 2 or 3 minutes. how much the immigration situation has affected El Salvador and Honduras in terms of the United States?
Well, I think we have to remember that El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, the so-called Northern Triangle of Central America, are the principal expulsors, are the countries that expel more people towards the United States. And I am using the verb expel, Mr. Lee, because I don't think people migrate because they really want to leave their countries if they could have. They go away because of the dire conditions in which they live. Because absolutely, and it has to do with gangs, it has to do with poverty, it has to do with extreme weather events. So these governments are very much and the national elites are very much responsible for this flow of people. That is why it is correct that what the Biden administration is doing, assessing that unless the United States supports a number of nationally centered programs, the flow of migrants will continue to travel north. Now, this is not only a south-north issue, because as you know, Costa Rica also receives many thousands of Nicaraguan migrants every year.
Yes.
And it's receiving more now because of the dictatorship in Nicaragua. But the main flow goes north, and it goes through through Guatemala into Mexico and the United States. And the numbers are high, but it's not a new crisis. It's the same crisis of old that has been refreshed every year as the conditions in Central America deteriorate.
Has the United States of America requested that Costa Rica take a certain amount of numbers of Nicaraguans in their country to help?
No, it has not. I think that is it is a natural flow. It has existed for over 100 years. Nicaraguans living in the northern part of Costa Rica during the 1940s, many workers from Nicaragua came to work in the plantations, in the banana plantations in the southern part of the country. In the 1980s, they came because of the war between the Sandinistas and the Somoza government. So this is an ongoing situation where the United States has not participated. This has to do with demographic and political and economic and even climate aspects that have affected Nicaragua.
Very interesting indeed. All right, what do you think, if we sit down and talk about this, what do you think that China brought to Costa Rica? Because there's a big interest. Time when we did the show, China brought maybe about 6 or 7 beautiful buses or trains, if my memory serves me right. What are they offering? Because I read a report a couple of months ago that China was thinking about building a road that would go from the capital all the way to the Atlantic zone in Limon. And, I wanted to find out on something like that. Are they doing this on their own, or they were hired by the Costa Rican government to do such things?
Well, no, I think we have to differentiate in what it is non-reimbursable cooperation, which is a cooperation that they provide without Costa Rica having to pay for anything, which is significant, but it's not enormous. And then the loans that they give to the country, which are, not too harsh, but they're not either very favorable in terms of interests that we have received. For example, loans to enhance that road that you talk about. That road existed before. It's the old Salping road that was built in the 1960s.
I know it well.
Now it needs to be enhanced, needs to be doubled in size, and that it's a big undertaking. But it includes something like 36, if I'm not mistaken, 36 bridges, and building 2 more lanes for cars going to the Caribbean. Is a very fundamental road for the country. Well, we are building that road, which is now it's paralyzed at this point because there is a conflict of perspectives between the government of Costa Rica and the government of China, and the company that is building the road, which is a private state company, as it is the case many times in China. But other than that, Costa Rica
That project is
has
on hold then?
I beg your pardon?
That project is on hold right now, the building?
It's
the
on
road
hold.
to the-
It's on hold, but I hope it continues because I think it's a very important road. We need the road, but this is only one of several projects that the Chinese have proven to handle in a very peculiar way. It's not easy to deal with them. And not only in Costa Rica, this is also the case in Montenegro, in Europe, and it has been the case in other countries in South America and in Africa, where the Chinese companies operate as private companies until there is a problem, and then they become state-owned companies, and then you're fighting not with a company with the government of China, which is a completely different ballgame. But Costa Rica was benefited undoubtedly by the relationship with China. We received at the time of the signing of the agreement that of recognition during the Arias administration. We received a brand new soccer stadium, over 200 patrol cars for the police. They bought an undetermined amount of Costa Rican bonds, millions of dollars in Costa Rican bonds of the public debt. And then we received a number of other cooperation mechanisms. I remember when I was president, I traveled to China talking about trying to seek for a strategic agreement with them. And they gave us around $150 million to build water
Plants?
plants and the aqueducts for many communities. So we have been receiving a number of benefits from that relationship that I find are very desirable, and I would insist that this is a relationship that we need to consolidate and in the best terms possible. Now, I obviously do not want to turn into a Chinese colony or anything of that nature, but that's far from feasible. That's not going to happen, and clearly, it's not. If it happens, it's not going to happen in hundreds of years. I continue to think that China is a model that the Chinese model of society, of the Chinese model of the economy and of politics, is something that we are not, prone to accept, and therefore is not a problem for us.
I would say, as we look at things the last, 15 years, it's very obvious that China has opened up its wings and it's flying not only in Central America, but South America, and it's all over the place. Obviously, they have a major plan, and it goes without saying, one of their biggest steps is what they did in Panama. So no matter how we look at it, there are some concerns from certain political people in Central America. While they like it, their concern is, why now, and how does this fit in terms of how the USA feel about these things?
Again, I think that the United States is concerned. I also know that it is a bipartisan concern. It's not one country, one party or the other. Both the Republican Democratic Party and their representatives in Congress and the Senate are concerned about it. The military are concerned about it. I mean, the Chinese presence in Central America is something that is already in the radar of the U.S. Southcom, and it is part of an analysis that's ongoing and that now includes, very complicated situations in the region. I mean, the biggest problem I see is that the presence of China has become more substantive as we see countries in the region becoming problematic again.
When you say problematic, in terms of what?
In terms of politics, especially, we have El Salvador under an authoritarian president. We have Nicaragua, which is again, a dictatorship that's doing everything that's necessary not to hold free and fair elections on 7th November. We have, very questionable circumstances affecting the governments of Honduras and El Salvador, and there are, enough sources of tension in Costa Rica and Panama that makes some people to be very uncomfortable with what has been happening there, being very unusual, because these were countries that were very stable and have been very stable. And now this seems not to be the case. So, adding the Chinese equation to all of that is something that's not necessarily making people to feel at ease with the next few years in the region.
We know for a fact that when you were president of Costa Rica, you supported a relationship between Costa Rica and China. When you went into that relationship, what were your main 3 or 4 goals, if you want to, that you might want to share, or could you share with us when you decided to get into a relationship like that, or extend the relationship further?
Yes, of course. Well, one very important one was to activate the free trade agreement that had been brokered between Costa Rica and China during the Arias and Chinchilla administrations. For me, that was very important because it had been almost a decade and we had not been able to profit from that free trade agreement. In fact, at the end of my administration, there were 2 products that were finally approved for exports in China: shrimp and pineapples. And I thought that was very important. That was one. 2, I was interested in infrastructure. We have been delayed for decades in taking care of our infrastructure, and we still today need a lot of it to update it, to build new infrastructure. And I thought that China could provide that for us. And thirdly, also as part of this, I wished that we could get engaged with China in some international projects that we were also very interested in, like, for example, dealing with the migration crisis, which I think needs a multilateral approach, and it requires a lot of support in the United Nations and other organizations of the sorts that will bring this issue, as well as others in the future, pandemics being one of them, and climate events being the other, into some kind of international framework.
I think infrastructure is one of those that I would really like to see the most, because as I touched with you the last time, I was concerned about some of the infrastructure in terms of roads in Costa Rica and highways that need to be brought up. I mean, you can get on them and you get to where you want, but the infrastructure is something that, which the same country here is going through right now. The Biden administration has put something forward to get this infrastructure going. And I'm sure that now that you live here, you know what's going on. So I was always concerned about the infrastructure. In the terms while you were there as president, will you be able to do an infrastructure a little bit to China? I know you talked about it.
Well, we were working very
Diligently
on trains. I think that the problem with roads, Mr. Lee, is that if you build a road, the minute you build it, the minute it just gets full with cars. And for us, that's a problem because of carbon. I mean, we are doing very well in producing renewable energy, electricity. We've done it for 70 years, thanks to our Institute of Electricity, and because we have had the privilege of being at the lead in Latin America for the production of hydroelectric power, but our car flotilla is just amazingly polluting. So in order to meet with our responsibilities and what we want to do with climate change standards, we need to have more people traveling by train, especially if those trains are electric, as we want. So that was one. And the other thing that we are very much in need of is, one, ports, especially the ones that we need in the Pacific, and the Chinese are interested in those. And the other thing is airports. And there's another international airport that we hope to build in Costa Rica in 3 stages up to the year 2050. And I do hope that, or we hoped at the time, that in preparing for that circumstance, the Chinese, that have a very phenomenal capacity for the building of airports, could also be part of that, of at least of the bid to build the airport. So yes, roads are important, but we were hoping for trains and ports and airports more likely.
You mentioned a little bit that China seemed to have some interest in the Pacific. Any slight interest by the Chinese about Limon?
Oh, yes. Well, as I mentioned, it was fundamental to enhance that road to Port Limon. And Limon is, almost at the side of Panama in terms of, location and everything.
Location
And
limitations, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to tell you the truth, what I heard at the time was that Panama was going to be incapable of withstanding the size of the trade of the future. I mean, it's not enough. What they'll have to pass on a lot of their cargo facilities to ports nearby, and obviously
Limon would fall in that phase.
Would fall in that category squarely. So I was hoping that would be part of the activity that we could trigger in Limon.
That would be great, obviously, for Limon, and also take some of the load off Panama to a certain extent. And it would do wonders for the economy and the job situation in Limon, no question about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about there's a rumor, I don't know how serious it is, that the Chinese was trying to convince Costa Rica to build like some type of police school in Costa Rica and also in Salvador. Any such thing about any such rumor?
No, it's not a rumor. The Costa Rican Police Academy was built in Guasimo, in the Caribbean area. It's a beautiful complex with, I think it's 9 buildings and training grounds. The Chinese did not provide any advice in terms of training, and the European Union provided all the money to build the furniture and to the blackboards and the materials needed for the policemen to learn. But the infrastructure of that police academy was provided by the People's Republic of China. And again, I inaugurated the building in Guasimo, in the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, in 2015 or 16, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting. Was it well received in the country, of course?
Oh, yes, of course, because the old buildings of the academy were ruinous and they were really in bad shape. So this gave the police a big boost regarding, the place where they would be getting their training. It was safer, with more light, with more air. It was a big farm so that they can do all the things they needed to do, the exercises, the running, the obstacle fields. I mean, all the things that they required are now there.
As we continue talking about Central America, I want you to tell us, what do you think is the economic situation of Central America, specifically probably Costa Rica and Guatemala?
Well, Guatemala is the biggest economy in Central America, and their growth rate for next year, I think, is around 4%, which is not bad at all, considering the pandemic and all the situations that triggered the last contraction of the economy. Costa Rica is up there around 3.5%, which again is pretty good. Costa Rica's economy was devastated by the pandemic because of our reliance on tourism. And tourism was basically eradicated as a result of the pandemic. But we continued exporting goods to the United States. And the fact that the American economy is so strong is very good for Central America, because more than half of what we export and we import comes and goes to and from the United States. So I think that economically, the situation is not as bad as one would think. The problem has to do with the distribution of wealth. The problem has to do with indebtedness, and in the case of Costa Rica, with the deficit, the fiscal deficit, which remains significant. Although I must say that the Costa Rican administration of President Alvarado was able, for the first time in 30 years, bring forth a tax reform that helped the country somewhat. But the cost at which that reform came has been very, very high in terms of social programs. So one, it's a tit for tat. The situation has improved a little bit. It's still not under control completely, but the social impacts of those decisions are significant.
My understanding was when the tax situation was presented, then most of the nation was totally against it at the beginning. Have they accepted it now?
Well, no, I don't think so. That's why taxes are called impuestos in Spanish, because they're imposed on you. So nobody likes taxation, but everybody wants services, good quality services. So, it's the kind of thing that comes with the trade. In all democracies and all good state governments have progressive taxation regimes. That means that those who earn the most pay the most. And this has not been the case in Costa Rica. It can be improved somewhat still at this point. And I think we have to do our biggest effort in order to get there. I must say, and probably you recall this, Mr. Lee, that Costa Rica became a part of the OECD, which is one of the most important and prestigious groups of countries, precisely because of our way of handling things. And so in order to be a member of the OECD, we have to be fiscally responsible, but also have to be willing to continue providing the human services and security services and so on that our population demands.
We know for a fact that the pandemic situation really hurt Central America in a big way. Costa Rica had it under control for a while. And as you mentioned, the tourist industry got hurt because they had to put everything on hold. What's the situation now with the pandemic? It's better in Central America in terms of Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and those places?
Well, I think it's not growing disorderly as it was the case a few months ago, but it's not good. I mean, the downside of opening up the country in order to get the tourists back was allowing people who were sick to come in, and that has meant that the level of contagions has grown. So we have more people sick now than we had a few months ago, but the situation is not out of control. We were very close of seeing the health system saturated just 2 months ago, maybe, but now the situation is not as bad. But unfortunately, the cases continue to grow, and the problem was, I think, in many ways, that even when the Costa Rican government bought the vaccines on time, and it bought the vaccines from Pfizer, so these are good vaccines, we have not been receiving the vaccines on time. So we got them on time, but we're getting them delayed. And without vaccination, it's very difficult to put the pandemic under control.
No question about it. Well, that situation with vaccine is not only in Costa Rica, there's a lot of Latin countries not.
That's correct.
Time. I know the Dominican Republic went through some of that. First, they were buying the vaccine from China, and then they started getting it from America, but it was a little slow. What about the unemployment situation in Central America? How is that right now?
Oh, it's pretty bad. It continues to be very high. I think that
is that because of the pandemic or just in general?
I think it has grown because of the pandemic. Yes, it has been. But it was bad before the pandemic. It's into the double digits, and that's always a bad thing. But what's worse is that the informality, the informal jobs. Those are the jobs that are not permanent ones, and that are very vulnerable, that pay no social security, that pay no minimum wage, etc. These are the informal jobs that people have to take in order to make their families survive day by day. I mean, these are people who sell in the streets fruits, or who are, doing menial work in gardens and in that kind of jobs. are up into the 80% of the jobs in Central America. And that's very bad. Now, that's not the case of Costa Rica, but it is the case in countries like Honduras or El Salvador. And when you have 70% informality, then the population is extremely vulnerable to all sorts of problems. And this is why they leave, because not only is employment very weak, but it's the informality, it's the quality of that job, of those jobs, what's at stake as well.
It goes without saying. I mean, people need jobs, they need food, and stuff like that. I think that's why they take the chance to cross the border. It's not the right thing to do, but sometimes when you need, you take chance. And I think that's what happened to people in Honduras, El Salvador, and some part of Guatemala to a certain extent. And it's tough. It's a very difficult process.
Oh, if you have to feed your family, you're going to do it, going to as far as you have to go. And I do not count myself amongst those who criminalize migrants and poor people, saying that, since they don't have anything to eat, they rob and they steal and they kill and they rape. It's not the case. And I know more rich people who are corrupt than poor people who are criminals. I frankly don't think one should criminalize poverty. But it is true that when you don't have food on your table two times a day, you're going to be desperate and looking for a way out as fast as possible.
I got one final question for you. Has the Biden administration addressed the Great Caribbean Basin?
I think they've done a good job in signaling you mean the migration or the vaccination? I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Just in general.
In general.
The Caribbean.
Well, it's difficult to speak about the Biden administration after what happened this weekend in Kabul in Afghanistan. I have my heart goes to all those thousands of people who got stuck there for lack of provision. But I think that compared to what the Trump administration was doing, the Biden administration has done big strides in trying to correct some of the problems that we were seeing becoming increasingly frequent in this country, including racial attacks and a growth of unscientific ideas roaming around and creating problems. But the Biden administration is it has not even governed for a year. It is already experiencing big criticism for its international policy. The situation in Afghanistan is not helping, and I would not dare to provide a very definitive judgment on the administration at this time.
It's too early. It's just too early. And
I think it's too early, and the situations that they're facing are very complex.
Well, not only that, there are a couple of things that were left on the table that they have to deal with. Afghanistan is one of them.
Big one. The
20
pandemic,
years there.
the economy.
It's a tough situation.
Yes.
It's a tough situation. And it's easy to critique, especially those who don't want to deal with logic and fact. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the family of the Grapevine to thank you. Thank you so much for being our special guest and for bringing so many important things to the table that a lot of us didn't know out there. And we don't have words to thank you for being so kind and being so straight up front.
Oh, my pleasure, Mr. Lee, anytime.
And we hope to see you back on the program down the road. I
hope so too. And big hug to all our listeners and to our viewers and to you too. May you be blessed. Thank you so much. And take care.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks a million. And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine, and hope to see you next week at the same time, at the same place. And we hope that this program has been to your enjoyment. Thank you. Good night.